Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Today, we're diving into one of the most elusive and debated mystery cults of the ancient world, Mithras, and the shadowy Saturnian current running beneath it. Today's guest is Peter Mark Adams, author, translator, and esoteric scholar whose work has become essential reading for anyone serious about Western esotericism. His latest book, Ritual and Epiphany in the Mysteries of Mithras, The Secret Cult of Saturn in Imperial Rome, is a deep, meticulously researched rereading of Mithraism as a living mystery tradition. Drawing on iconography, Orphic metaphysics, theurgy, ritual theory, art history, and initiation, Peter reconstructs the actual ritual life, visionary experiences, and initiatory psychology of Mithric devotees. But before we get into this, I will introduce the other people on the show. And joining us today, we got the Headless Giant, and he is the one who actually found this guest. I am very, very happy and appreciative of that. Thank you very much, Headless. And why don't you let everybody know what's going on with you and the multiple amount of shows you are doing now?
You got it. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube at the Headless Giant Podcast. And also, if you tune in later, me and Ethan are going to be doing the trialogues with Ricardo, and we're going to bring our topics and have a good synthesis time. And on Mondays, I've got Alchemy Mondays with Eros Up, and that's always a fun podcast as well. And if you have any kind of occult experiences or mystical happenings, you can send your experiences to my Gmail at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com, and me and Nick read those on Thursdays. So definitely check that out as well. And we're going to be doing another in the series of Rustic Gods with Jules at some point this week. So check that out. We're going to be talking about all sorts of phallic gods of the ancient world, and it's going to get really weird.
I'm sure it will be.
I'm here for it.
Definitely. Next week, I think we will also start. We will start going through the infamous 777 book by Aleister Crowley. This should probably take us a few years to go through the whole book, but keep an eye out for that. If you're not too scared, you can come check out Crowley's 777 book and what it's really about. And if you're heavily into gematria or interested in gematria, this is for you. So please come check it out. And Jules, thank you very much, sir. I'm glad you made it again. I know, again, like the weekends is your only time really with your family, and you do spend a lot of time with the Occult Rejects. So I do appreciate
it's my only time to stream too. So I appreciate you having me, Nick. Guys, it's my third Occult Reject show this week. I am Jules, the host of the Gray Pilled podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Gray Pilled Pod. Go to my Patreon. We do a lot of cool stuff over there. A lot of tiers set up. You get a free sticker pack, you get exclusive Patreon content, and it's a good way to support the show. But probably going live later today. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Maybe Cryptid Watch or my part 2 on the Green Man. But I'll kind of let people know throughout the day, so y'all stay posted. But good morning, and it's nice to meet you, Peter. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Jules. And last but not least, before we get to the guests, we got my man Ethan Indigo. What is going on, sir? And how are you this morning?
Oh, I cut off for a second there. Sorry. Peter, excellent to meet you. Headless and Nick and Jules, always great to speak with you guys. Ethan Indigo Smith, writer, philosopher, Tai Chi practitioner, easy to find on all the social media. And I appreciate people who reach out and communicate. So again, excited for this, Peter.
Thank you very much, Ethan, for joining us. I know it's early on your end, so I really do appreciate you making it. And finally, for the guest, again, Peter, this is your first time on the show. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the future. But yeah, please, for the fans who don't know who you are yet, please let them know like what your deal is, and mention your books, and please, anything you'd like to promote, let the people know about it.
Yeah, I mean, wow, where to start? I mean, I've been connected with the shadow world of the occult since I was 8 years old, pretty well. I really got into energy work in my teens, working on systems like Shotokan karate, Tai Chi, a lot of energy work, meditation. I'm like over 70 years old right now, so this is really a long period of time that we're talking about. But very late in life, pretty well after I finished with professional life, I started as a professional writer, author. And that's when I really started digging into the subjects that have been so dear to my heart for decades, literally decades. And more specifically, the mystery cults of antiquity are a kind of speciality of mine, okay, from a ritual perspective, from ethnographic and cross-cultural perspective. And most of my books kind of hit on that topic from one angle or another. So I produced an analysis of the rites of Dionysus as we see them depicted in the frescoes of the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii. My most recent work is on the Mithraic mysteries, and I guess we're going to talk about that more. But I've also penetrated a very obscure tarot deck called the Solarbusker Tarocchi. And this 15th century elite tarot deck turned out to have several layers of encoding. And the deepest layer was a ritual sequence for invoking Kronos Saturn in the form of the draconian current Amun. And that itself was kind of my first major work back in 2017. It kind of shocked the scholarly community and the tarot community, who have, for the last 10 years, had a lot of problem digesting the content that I uncovered, because it affects our perception of the Renaissance, of the development of tarot, and also of the role of these kind of rites amongst the Renaissance elite families. So that was a fairly substantial piece of work. On top of that, I spent like 25, 30 years in energy healing, which is like the other side of the coin from martial arts. So that, you know, instead of learning how to inflict suffering, you learn how to alleviate it. I say, as a kind of professional breath worker and Reiki practitioner, and using meridian-based therapy techniques. I've done that professionally over like 20 odd years with my partner. So there's a book in which we've covered our most extraordinary cases, the cases that shone the most light on the nature of consciousness and reality. It's called The Power of the Healing Field, and that's within a tradition. So that's by and by. What else? I've written a book with Christophe Poncet, who did a lot of work to uncover the Hermetic side of the Tarot de Marseille tradition cards. And we did a book together with the Scarlet imprint called Two Esoteric Tarots. So we kind of intertwine our thoughts about the Solarbusker and the Tarot de Marseille from an esoteric context in that book. And if I can think of any other books, I'll mention them. But that's enough for now, I guess.
Well, it's interesting, Mark. Peter, I got first introduced to Reiki from a martial arts class. I was taking Hapkido, and the instructor had what he called hurt 'em and heal 'em classes, where he would be teaching Hapkido, and then afterwards they would do the instruction into Reiki. So it was very much integrated into that whole system.
Yeah, I consider them like two sides of the same coin, basically. You know. Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that Usui Reiki, if that's what we're talking about, that lineage is a offshoot of Tendai Buddhism, which is the Vajrayana tradition within Japan. So that, you know, we're talking about channeling essentially a ray or a healing energy from a deity And I think it's important to state that, because a lot of people think Reiki is just some kind of off-the-shelf, common practice, and it's far more than that. It is, literally a mediation of the highest evolutionary or spiritually evolutionary forces to whoever you end up treating.
Right? It's the accessibility that I think brings a lot of people into it, is because, they don't have to know any of the esoteric to actually feel it.
Sorry, guys, I'm getting a freeze on the internet.
Yeah, you broke.
So I may miss.
He may not hear what we're saying.
Okay, I'm good now. Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay.
Yeah, Hellas, repeat yourself if you don't mind, sir.
Sorry, Headless was saying something.
Yeah, the Reiki tradition seems very accessible to people, so it's almost like, it's perfect for Americans, because you don't have to know any of these traditional, and just do it right away.
Yeah, which is good, but we should realize that they got such tremendous power in their hands, and very often I think that realization is not there.
Absolutely. We got to do a Reiki show with you sometime.
Yeah, I will say there's so
well,
many. Go ahead. Go for it.
I was going to say, one time I took a photograph of a group of recently graduating Reiki teachers, and I took it with a simple digital camera, and the light flashed straight back into my eyes, as though I had stood in front of a mirror and attempted to take a flash photograph. And so I looked at the camera and I thought, something wrong with this. And I did it again. It happened again. And then the third time, it took a photograph, and I felt satisfied. When I checked these frames later, it was quite clear there was distinct auras of energy around the group. And they had a three-dimensionality to them. And they acted with a density which was invisible to everybody there, including me, but sufficient to reflect light as though they had a mirroring effect. And I think that sequence of photographs, if we ever do anything, maybe we should put them up and let people see that. Because I'm not aware of any other photography that's actually caught the nature of this energy as a physical component of a group.
Absolutely.
I will say, unfortunately, there is a lot of things, like you even went into tarot, and it's like I'd love to just waste this whole show just talking about your tarot research, but and then even the Reiki. Again, why I was saying hopefully we'll have you on again at some other point, because there seems like plenty of things that would fit this show or fit our interest to talk about with you. But I guess just unfortunately going back to Mithras, one thing with your book, you do mention like epiphany and ritual in the title. Obviously you find that very important then if you put that in there. What is the reasoning in your book? What is it that I guess you think that you're hitting on that's different, and that you find of interest in the ritual and the epiphany part, instead of like theurgy and other things, theology and other things?
Okay, so my take on the mysteries or the mystery tradition is that it's always peculiar to a specific deity. So obviously
before we go too far, I heard you say it before, and I think it's great. Could you go into what is a deity to you before maybe we even continue?
Yeah, well, I take it as an evolutionary force driving the universe. So just as you take a pure white light and drive it through a prism, you generate a set of different flavors, frequencies, whatever you want to call it, which kind of correspond to the major deities recognizable in human spiritual culture, cross-culturally. But they all resolve back to that white light, okay?
Yeah.
So that no matter which way you're traveling, on the white light or on the color beam, you're essentially on a continuum that I see as a teleological driver of the universe's spiritual unfolding. That's to say, the unfolding of consciousness, which I take to be the primary material of the universe. Okay.
I like that.
I take matter as kind of secondary, but they're totally interconnected. So that any work with a deity is essentially a cooperative working. In other words, you're aligning yourself with a certain frequency of energy to do a certain type of work. It's not about your spiritual evolution or your spiritual experience. It's about the work that's accomplished through that mediation of a deity's energy. Okay, it's purposeful, it's teleological, it's unfolding. And you mentioned theurgy just now. Well, theurgy arose essentially because early Christianity closed down the mystery cults. Okay, so they had to find an alternative to the sanctuary-based approach to initiation, and the alternative was theurgy. And you see it articulated in Iamblichus and Proclus. And my book on the Hagia Sophia traces that building's architecture and its decorative design back to the mysteries of Eleusis. Okay, that's another thing we could talk about one day. So that what we see is that the most primitive level or bedrock of spiritual experience, from my perspective, is in the cults of possession. That's to say, voluntary possession, not involuntary possession. Okay,
Nice. Good to know.
and that's like the one universal spiritual constant in our upward trajectory from the upper Paleolithic to today.
Real quick, just
99.5. Yeah.
Would you consider invoking when people are invoking a deity or whatever, that would be almost considered a like welcomed possession?
I mean, theurgy is possession by a deity.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's not anything else.
Oh no. All right.
Well,
no,
what's important here, though? What's important here? You need to discard the notion that your ritual invocation causes a deity to possess you. That's a nonsense. That's just looking through the wrong end of the telescope. And Proclus Diadochus, one of the colossal intellects of the 5th century, was quite clear. He says all about commensurability. Have you repaired your energy body sufficiently to act as a meeting place and into a place where the deity can touch? Have you aligned yourself with that deity's values sufficiently to make it a welcome and desirable connection? Because the deity wants to reach out all the time, 24/7. It's not hidden. If you're not connecting with the deity, that's your fault. That's your problem. It's not the deity's problem. Okay. And that embrace with the deity is purely, okay, I'm aligned with the set of values and the ethical requirements to such a degree that deity becomes an element in your day-to-day life and what you're attempting to achieve. The service, in other words, is the driver, not your aspiration for spiritual experience. I mean, that is not even a starter in my worldview. Nobody cares about your aspiration for spiritual experience. We care about what you do in life and what element of service you bring to the common mess that we're all in here.
The common mess we're all in here. I like that.
Because people often write to me and say, how can I connect with such and such a deity? And I don't know how to answer them. What the hell, what are you doing in life? I mean, even somebody doing a low level of service, serving in a soup kitchen, is more connected to a deity than most people who are doing spiritual pilgrimages and stuff. It's all about community. It's all about the service. and the rest of it is just a waste of time, frankly.
Well, I will even say, I don't know how to say, when I had my, I guess, magical experiences, at some point I had, just for me, for myself, I'm not saying this is for everybody else, but for me, I feel like, when you want to connect to God, God never left, or, it didn't disappear. It's as if I, for some reason, turned my back on the source and decided to have my own solo experience. And I'm the one who walked away and traveled away. If I want to go back, I got to put the work in. It doesn't need to come to me. I'm the one who left it. So I kind of see a little bit of what you're saying and agree. Thank you for that whole explanation.
That was very well put, Peter. I'm going to clip that and put it up on my social media.
Yeah.
So you may go viral.
Yeah, that was a mic drop.
It's probably going to. It's probably going to piss off a lot of people.
Good. It'll make people think, right? Because people aren't doing quite enough of that these days. So.
Yeah, that was the best explanation of deity with the light, the white light, and the rays. It made me think too that naturally you found Reiki because of it has this almost verbal enunciation correspondence in the light ray and the universal wisdom of the ray chi, if you will. So that was very beautiful explanation of deity. Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you.
So Peter, I guess if you don't mind, well, does anybody have any other questions before I ask him about the ritual aspect?
I was gonna go into a little bit of a distinction.
Oh yeah, we started elsewhere, didn't we?
Yeah, and I took you off with the whole deity. That was a question in itself. Sorry, but yeah, headless. Ask him something, then we'll get back. I'm sorry.
Well, there's a difference in soteriologies that I see blended together within the Mithras cult. Is you've got on one hand you've got the sanguinary soteriology coming through the bull sacrifice, right, and on the other you've got the epiphanic. Right, you see the epiphanic or epiphany angle that you see associated with Apollo at Delphi and these other rituals where it's more about engaging with the deity as opposed to making certain sacrifices. But you see both of them coming together within the Mithras cult that is almost unique in some ways because it's experiencing the same sort of epiphanic thing in a sanguinary kind of environment under the ground. Right, so it's sort of a melding of a lot of different forms of salvation protocols.
Okay, let's dissect it a little. First of all, there was no bull sacrifice ever in the cult of Mithras. Okay, if you take the so-called tauroctony, so-called bull killing scene. Actually, he's kneeling on the back of the bull and stabbing it in the shoulder, and that, you're going to be the sacrifice if you go and try that out. So it clearly isn't a depiction of a sacrifice. That's the first thing. Okay, what it is the iconography can first be found in the Epic of Gilgamesh around 2000 BCE. Okay, where Enkidu and Gilgamesh conspire to kill the bull of heaven who's creating havoc on earth, sent by the goddess. So that's exactly how they do that. And that element becomes part of Mithras's hero activity. He fights with some giants. He fights with the bull of heaven. He carries it on his back. He feasts of it along with Helios. Okay, so what's being laid out is a traditional trajectory of the hero. Okay, why is that important? Is because it provides the ethical basis upon which Mithraism rests. Courage and good community with fellow initiates were like primary ethical values. So the myth cycle of Mithras as hero god spells that out in the iconography. Why? Because only about 5% of the entire Roman Empire were literate. Okay, and even amongst that 5%, there's a very steep decline to the minuscule number of people who not only were literate enough to read metaphysics, but had access to texts and could do so. The iconography was everything. Everything you had to say had to be there. Okay, so the employment of this ancient, I would date it back to the Neolithic, frankly, because if it's written down around 2000 BCE, we're already headed into the early Bronze Age, so it must have existed as an oral tradition long before then, and that takes you straight into the Chalcolithic and the Neolithic. Just gets lost in the mists of time. The other element is the kneeling on the back of the bull and stabbing it. Well, the deity Mithras is attested in the Bronze Age in Sanskrit, in Avestan, in Hittite, and in Mitanni. In other words, the name, the god Mithra, originates in Proto-Indo-European. Okay, it's a root language, hypothetical root language. And again, that takes you right back into the Neolithic somewhere. We don't know when the various Indo-European languages emerged from that Proto-Indo-European. So we're looking at a very rich iconographic tradition. Zoroastrianism only comes into play around 600 BC. We're talking about 8000 BC. Okay, so the confusion of Mithraism as a Zoroastrian or Persian cult doesn't see the is kind of blind to the depth that we're talking about, the time depth that we're talking about here. So what we have, therefore, is a deity who presides over agreements, compacts, and that kind of things, right? So he is typically a deity of the ruling elite who are responsible for making those kind of agreements. And that's the context in which we see Mithraism emerge in Hellenistic Anatolia. And then it gets conveyed to Rome as part of the settlement of the Armenian issue, because it was like split between the Sasanians and the Romans, and they agreed to put a common ruler in place. And as part of sealing that deal, the Sasanians brought the cult of Mithras to Nero's Rome, and he was initiated in the court there. And because of that, the court followed. They also got initiated. And from appointments from the court to the empire, it spread naturally. So it was never part of Roman state religion. It was never a part of the system. Every single Mithraea was personally financed, established, managed, and run out of people's private pockets. So there were like 500 Mithraea in Rome, and nobody knows how many in the empire actually. Must be running to 1,000, 2,000. But from Hadrian's Wall in Scotland to the deserts of Syria, from North Africa to the Rhine and Danube, it was a pervasive private cult activity, although some of these Mithraea may have had no more than half a dozen guys. Okay, they tended to have the number of people that they could afford because everything was paid for from their pockets. They established the temple. They bought whatever's needed to furnish it. They bought the chicken or pigs, whatever they were going to have as their cult meal. And they had to, and also, in those days, life was short. And on the fringes of empire, it could be very short. And so they just had to recruit and run initiation to keep their numbers up. Okay, they never proselytized, never. Mithraism was never a competitor to Christianity, which was a proselytizing mass religion. Mithraism was a private, secret mystery cult. So they're like diametrically opposed to each other. Am I talking too much?
No, you're great.
Did we get round to your question, Nick? We're off on another tangent here, I think.
No, that was great.
Where have we gone? You wanted to know about ritual and epiphany, right? Why they were so important? Because it's a mystery cult. That's why. the mystery cult is about possession by the deity, the voluntary influx of divinity into the initiates. And that's what it gifted. And whether it was the mysteries of Eleusis, where you just show up at the sanctuary and you would have this gift, or whether it's a private, like Dionysian initiator going village to village, or whether it's a small private cult like Mithras, I mean, they all vouchsafe the same extraordinary experience as Walter Burkhardt described it. The experience of becoming one with a deity. And I understand this mainly from Mithraic iconography, but that sense of oneness is a return to the golden age. And what they mean by that is non-dual awareness. Sudden unfolding like a flower of a state of non-dual awareness that forever changes your perspective on life and death. Because you can't sustain that state. It's impossible. Your energetic system is just not robust enough to sustain such a level of consciousness. But having attained to it once, it changes everything. So that's the answer to the question that you asked 2 questions ago.
That's quite right. I was quite all right. The way it went was maybe the way it was supposed to go. So that's what
got there finally, huh? Got there.
Yeah. Did any of you have any questions or anything else you wanted to add before we go further and stuff?
I wonder in regards to the iconography of the bull and what's going on there, I wonder if there is a relationship to the celebrations in modernity of the running of the bulls and the bull, what is it? Sorry, I'm escaping my mind right now, but using the red cape to attract the bull and so on and so forth.
Bullfighting.
Excuse me.
Bullfighting, bull baiting. Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing there is the traces of a very archaic bull cult that we can trace to, say, Çatalhöyük in like 6000 BCE in Anatolia. So there's an element of sacrificing bulls, but also an element in which the animal is considered to be sacred, is an embodiment of overflowing life, which is why Dionysus is often depicted or spoken of as a bull, or the pharaoh in Egypt was the bull of his mother. So this animal has enormous iconographic and physical appeal to civilizations from the Neolithic onwards. And you're right, I believe the traces of this bull cult are this braving exposure of yourself to the bull, which is not always fatal. Generally, it's fatal in bullfighting, but bullfighting is a very refined cultural element in a much wider, a much more dispersed, generally letting a bull run through the town, right? And letting people like challenge it and then run away from it. And all of this kind of bull baiting behavior is really common around the Mediterranean. So, and of course, in like Crete, in the Minoan civilization, we have the acrobats, running towards and somersaulting over the back of the bull. So it's, enormously resonant figure in our cultural life for millennia.
Well, Peter,
I definitely see those. Yeah.
Me and Jules covered the Tauroctony angle coming from the Bugonia ritual, which was practiced all around the Mediterranean, talking about spontaneous life being burst forth from the bull, and Aristeus and his is creating the beehives. And now we have the Bugonia movie out now, which is like a reversal of the Tauroctony back then, where it was the bull who died for humanity. In the version of Bugonia that they're promoting now, it's humanity has to die for the bees. So it's like a complete reversal of the
for nature, complete bastardization. But,
the other kind of angle of this is, of course, the bull is Taurus,
right?
And the place where where he's stabbing it is the Pleiades. Okay. And when we look at like cross-culturally hunter-gatherer societies, like 80–90% of them, they don't have all the constellations we have today, but almost every one of them recognizes the Pleiades. And I think one of the reasons is that you have this stream of meteors emitting from that portion of the sky every year. So there's a genuine effusion, which even today people often think of or talk about as a health or life-enhancing effusion of light from the sky. So again, we're talking about incredibly private. I mean, if it's hunter-gatherer, you're talking about when? Who knows how old that is?
But
you
in the
definitely should
iconography,
be thinking upper Paleolithic. Yeah. Sorry.
where he's being stabbed, the bull is being stabbed, that's where the meteor shower is occurring. That's, that's like where the blood is coming from the bull of heaven. So it's incredibly powerful.
That's it. So it's like an element of star law, which we've largely forgotten today. Why that effusion of light was associated as a positive life-enhancing feature of the night skies is a bit of a mystery to us today.
Did anybody have I wanted to ask him another question. Anybody have anything before I go forward? Don't want to leave you guys out here. Sorry, go. Does anybody have anything?
We're good.
All right, Peter, you do kind of place like a little bit of an emphasis on the Orphic metaphysics within the Mithric symbolism. What is like, I guess, like maybe some
Absolutely.
of the biggest, what are the biggest signs or stuff like in that in signs that Orphism might be kind of like behind the rituals in a bit, if you don't mind talking about that.
Yeah, mainly is what is Orphism? I mean, essentially, it's the esoteric tradition within Hellenism, within Hellenistic culture. I believe Orphism arose out of the direct experience of mystery initiation, which affirms the eternal life of the soul, for want of a better way of phrasing it. That is certainly a distinct phenomenology of mystery initiation. People perceive themselves not as the persona, but as something larger that continues from life to life. They may even recover experiences, memories of past lives, and that kind of cements that belief system in place. They have a sense of a deity as a presiding presence in their life. So that kind of is another element of Orphism. The efficacy of the rituals and the ability of these rituals to cleanse what probably today we call karma. They would call it miasma. It's the biographical, familial, and ancestral karma that we carry with us, like so many anchors. So all of these elements are like common to Orphism. If you were going to boil Orphism down to its most essential common elements, you'd say, this sense of providential outreach of gods, the ability to become possessed by and cleansed through the rituals of theurgy and mystery initiation, and that cleansing of karma, which frees you from the bounds of fate or necessity, ananke, as they would have called it, and that opens up possibilities for your spiritual life, which is otherwise encumbered, generally too encumbered to really blossom. And so for me, those kind of 4 points are like Orphism in a nutshell. And all of those points are direct outgrowth of the experience that Orphism or the mystery cults opened up as a possibility to people. And so it's no surprise to see them appearing again and again in various guises, and one of them is Mithraism, which is straight out of the Hellenistic world. So, of course, Orphism is kind of its natural, is the water it swam in. It's kind of, any cult coming out of the Hellenistic world will have Orphism as its underlying belief system. But it's a belief system rooted in the first-hand experience of the mystery cults and theurgy.
I don't know if you can see this question. I want to just toss this in here real quick. Nick, ask Peter if he believes the cult actually died out or was just absorbed into certain families.
Well, that brings us on to a topic I raised briefly in the introduction, which is I found distinct traces of ritual activity embedded in a 15th century solar busker tarocchi. Okay, and it's a full ritual sequence embedded in those cards, and then layered over it are historical and literary narratives, so that, you know, it took me 4 years working day and night to decode the imagery, and it was just because I was so frustrated with it. I mean, since I was a teenage, you know, I'd been working with tarot. I knew the imagery well, and I came across this solar busker shortly after it was purchased from the hands of, it had been in private hands since the 15th century. And it was purchased by the Brera Gallery in Milan, like 800,000 euro or something. And of course, they did an exhibition and catalog and everything. And I looked at these cards and I thought, what the heck is this? The quality of artwork was so high. I mean, it was a masterwork. It had been printed from engraving plates. Somebody had bought the copper, cut it. And even so, there was no way a jobbing artist in the 15th century had the historical, literary access to such a fine library of Latin, Greek. Goodness knows, it had to be a real intellectual mind to put this together, to encode this system. And I traced the system back, which individuals were involved, all the way back to Constantinople in the 15th century. And from there back into the Hellenistic, you know, into the 5th century, actually, system emerging with Proclus and the survival of the Eleusinian mysteries after they were closed down at the end of the 4th century. So that tradition never died, and it was transferred to the elite families of the Italian Renaissance, which is extraordinary. And it conveyed a powerful current, say, the particular form of the energy they were interested in was the same energy that motivated Alexander the Great, because his myth cycle was that he was born of the intercourse of the god Amun with his mother. And when he went to Egypt, he went down the Nile and went to Luxor Temple, in which the inner sanctum depicts the deity conceiving the pharaoh through a human mother. And he went through a ritual process there, and then he went to the Siwa oasis in the desert, where the priests of Amun, at that oracle there, confirmed him as the son of Amun. And you'll see Alexander regularly wears a helmet with the ram's horns on it, horns of Amun-Ra. And so this was like a template and an ideal for the Italian Renaissance elite. If it's good enough for Alexander, and given what he could achieve, it's good enough for us as princes, as Renaissance princes, who spent at least half the year on horseback campaigning. I mean, this was the idea of these Renaissance princes were just, you know, dilettantes. Is, you know, they learned how to use every weapon from childhood onwards. They rode in joists. They hunted on foot and on horseback. And every year they put their army together and led it on successful campaigns in Europe. And that's how they made their money, as condottieri, mercenary soldiers. They were hard men. So the whole cultus of Alexander is just like, you know, just fits them so well. and that's what we have in the Solar Busker is direct evidence for the continuity of this cult from, well, it's generally thought of started with Hatshepsut, which would be about 1400 BCE, but quite possibly it existed long before her. And then Amenhotep III, right through Ramses II. Most of them were warriors, and there we have the same stuff, the conception from Amun being depicted in Renaissance, 15th century noble Tarocchi. It's absolutely extraordinary. And then that Tarocchi, that set of cards were kept in private hands until they were bought in 2012, I think. The first time the cards came to public notice was just like, So that's an extraordinary tale in itself. The secret occult power of the Renaissance elite families. Of course, the D'Este family of Ferrara, who designed the deck, had it designed, are a cadet branch of the House of Este, which is one of the Europe's oldest lineage
one of the Venetian
families
black nobility
branches.
families. Yeah. This goes
Well,
into
all
the banking.
It was
families of
designed.
Venetian.
Yeah. Well, it was designed for a Venetian family. It was a
Right.
gift.
This confirms a lot of suspicion.
Were designed for Marin Sanudo. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Marin Sanudo was the scion of the Sanudo and Venier families, two of the leading patrician families of Venice.
Okay. Interesting.
Anyway,
something I have to look into.
That's a tale for another day, I guess.
Yeah, man. No, that's something that I have to look into. And you said that Mithras was represented by the ram. You said no. You said that Amun-Ra.
Amun-Ra. Yeah.
And so would that have any kind of correlation to Aries or Mars, like just the archetype?
It's hard to say. It isn't connected, isn't it? It's it's so martial.
Well, the ram being,
but also, but also like the Mithraic imagery is also encoded in the Solar Busker.
Okay.
That so that they have that kind of insight into the connectivity on a very occult level. And when you think about the lineage of these families, they there was no historiography that we could recognize before like the 19th century. Didn't exist. And what I mean by that is history as we understand it is like a set of economic, political, social data from which we can frame certain hypotheses, test them. But that didn't exist at least until the 19th century. Up till then, history was exemplary. There were tales that were told that taught certain lessons, okay? And one of the primary lessons for the Italian elite was that they originated from Troy. Okay, so you have this is all in Virgil's Aeneid, and the survivors of Troy traveled across the Mediterranean, they went to Carthage, and then they went to Rome. So all the Italian elite claimed this line of descent. But as they would have also known, the region around Troy was famously the area in which the offspring of Nimrod lived. Okay, so in Nimrod, we're back to the descent from the angels, the fallen, so-called fallen angels, their miscegenation with human women. And so for the Renaissance elite, there's also this dynamic of an other than human component, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you had brought up the epic of who was it? The epic of Gilgamesh earlier, and he's kind of the same character that we see.
God-man.
Yeah, as this Nimrod
God-man
figure. Yeah.
And the other thing is, of course, they'd surfaced like the Hermetica in the 15th century. There was a lot of stuff in that about human beings being more than purely human. being partly demonic, you know. So they had a lot of, I say, without a historiography, their view of history was very static. It was just exemplary figures like this drawn from literature. So the line between fact and fiction was very, very thin, if not non-existent,
Right.
to be honest. Anyway, this is by the by. We're a long way from Mithras right now.
Another thing I wanted to ask, to what extent do you think the Mithric rites were about like literal ascent through the planetary spheres versus more of like symbolic internal transformation?
Okay. So there's no question that the grades were based on 7 planets. It's clear. The problem is this. It's kind of twofold. Basically, the whole point of a mystery initiation is that you bypass all the celestial spheres and you go directly to the hyper-celestial encounter with a deity. So it makes no sense to get initiated into the moon, into Venus, into Mercury, into Mars. It doesn't make any sense. That's, you know, that's a kind of academic speak because they're not thinking about what a mystery cult is. And as I say, the whole point of a mystery cult is to bypass the celestial spheres and go directly to an encounter with the demiurge, okay, which is, you know, Kronos, basically, in the Mithraic mysteries. But Kronos as an emblem of the golden age, and therefore a time of perfect peace, harmony, etc., etc. And what they're like signaling to us is a state of non-dual awareness, which is a common mystical experience in every time and every culture. So why then do they have the 7 grades is the question. Because they were self-sustaining little Mithraic units. And to get people to the state, get their energy body to the state where they could have this encounter with the deity, they needed to have a process in place. Universally in the Hellenistic world, there were 2 steps: cleansing by water and cleansing by fire, literally. So on top of that, they added on a first state, which is induction into the cult. That wouldn't have happened in a sanctuary. You just turn up at a sanctuary. But since you're running this little microcosmic initiatory tradition yourself, you need to induce people into it. They need to take an oath. They need to swear an oath, better to say. And then you can start the process of purification. You're repairing the energy body. You have to bring the energy body to a point where it's capable of touching divinity. And so the first 3 grades are the attempt to do that. The other 4 grades are, starting with the lions. The lions are purely initiatory grade. In other words, they're sacerdotal members of the cult. They're not the rank and file. And so typically only the most dedicated, purified individuals would even aspire to that, because the responsibility on them to maintain an ongoing and living relationship with the deity day after day is so high. It makes so many demands of your time and energy. So and also you have to have a couple of guys who actually administer this cult. You know, check that the Mithraeum is there, that they've got supplies in, that everyone is going to turn up. All the admin of running a small club has to take place amongst the 4 top level grades. So in fact, this idea was enunciated by the great Mithraist Manfred Klaus, probably in the 70s or so. He had speculated that in fact the grades were separated into 2 groups. But when I examined the actual sequence of initiation into Hellenistic mysteries, it was clear to me that you need to have these stages. And that once you have the encounter with the deity, there's no further revelation. Okay. Having encountered non-dual awareness, there's nowhere else to go, so to speak. That's it. You're there. So if you have an aspiration towards the priesthood, then you would move on into the other grades. But the number of people, I guess, given that you're a soldier on the front lines of the empire would be very few and far between. Also, you would have to have the means to become a administrator of a cult like this, you know. And if you're on a soldier's salary or whatever, civil servant salary, it's probably out of reach. I say everything has to be paid for. I don't know, does that help answer your question? But I'll say the main thing is that there's no sense in 7 grades as initiatory grades for everyone to go through, because that's not what a mystery cult does.
It's amazing to me, the
initiation
continuity
into the sphere of Saturn.
Right. It's amazing to me the continuity between the Mithraic cult and the organization within the Freemasons, right? So you've got, it sounds like this Order of Lions are protecting the circle, right? They would be like the Tylers. And then you've got these other positions that seem to be adopted straight from the Mithraic cults, just sort of passed right on into Freemasonic rituals, as well as the 3 grades as the purification grades, the Blue Lodge as well. So you've got, you know, a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I think probably the archetypal nature of these structures would tend to repeat, you know. I say it was universal in the Hellenistic mystery cults, irrespective of which deity they were for, that you would need to have this kind of progression, that the higher grades are limited to a very small number of people who aspire to priesthood or to administrative roles. You know, I guess human nature hasn't changed that much in how many millennia.
You know what's interesting? Like I guess you're saying human nature hasn't changed that much. It's something I was just thinking about now, and it's like not really that big of a deal. But I do find it interesting how it's something that is when it comes. You say cleansing by fire or cleansing by water. You know, even in my own ritual work or even doing the Gnostic Mass and the OTO, you cleanse by water and then you do cleanse by fire. It's interesting how like that idea, no matter like what context maybe you're working, that is something that is like a thread throughout so much ritual work. Yeah. Is that whole cleansing by fire and water. Absolutely. No matter what you're doing, that's always seems to be involved regardless. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. You see it with baptism.
I
think
sorry, I think there's a lag that I
think it's important though to distinguish the. Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish between the physical activities and the efficacious force that's being invoked, evoked.
Something I do want to ask.
Situations.
Something I do want to ask you real quick, Peter, before I forget, and it's a little bit of it might be a little bit of a weird question. When it comes to initiations or rituals, I do, from my own experience from going through initiations in the OTO and my own experience from using the hexagram, pentagram rituals, and even looking at Crowley's Knox formula, I do sometimes wonder if these things are even showing symbolism of actual changes within the body itself. I couldn't tell you what any of these mythic rituals look like, but when you have looked at these things, have you ever wondered if it's actually like showing anything tied to physiology? I know that might be hard to explain it this way, maybe so you get a better idea of what I'm saying. I do think that this may sound crazy. Looking at the Lesser Banisher ritual, the pentagram, and even the hexagram, and Crowley's Knox formula again, I do think what you might be looking at is the change that's going on inside of the eyeball that determines how much light you're actually pulling in. I know that might sound wild and off the wall, but I do think it might actually be showing you physical changes inside your eyeball, inside your body. Have you ever thought that or seen anything like that with this stuff? Or has that even ever come up in your mind? You may never even thought of that.
Well, for me, the physical activity of initiation is merely is almost incidental to the process that's going on. It's like the 10% or whatever is of the iceberg is the ritual activity. The iceberg itself is wholly administered by the spirits, deities that are evoked to conduct that activity. Okay, so of course that affects your energy body, but this kind of possession cult bedrock upon which most of our spirituality rests extends to the ritual actions itself. So as soon as you form an intense ritual space, you have a collapse of temporal, let's say the spatial and temporal vectors that structure our day-to-day reality collapse. Okay, so you have very intense psychoenergetic effects generated. Okay, and they are of such an intensity that they'll give rise to visionary experiences, to expansion of awareness. So there's a huge, so to speak, spectrum between undertaking ritual actions, which the most extreme extent are purely theatrical, like in Eyes Wide Shut, right? They're making a movie, all the way to a ritual that is so powerful it triggers spontaneous kundalini. That's to say, the ritual space becomes so dense it triggers kundalini and fundamental shifts in the quality and depth of awareness.
That's interesting.
And
I'll say myself, just from
the spectrum is driven by the presence that are invoked into that. It's not our energy. Our energy generally is not powerful enough to do that. Okay, but we enter into a continuum with like a stream of consciousness which is merged with other dimensional entities and beings, for want of a better expression. And that's where the motivation, the motive power of change within a ritual process takes place. This is just one way of viewing it. I'm not preaching this. I'm just saying,
oh yeah, no, that's
my perception is this. Okay.
yeah.
Not everyone will agree with it.
Well, even from my own experience with initiations, I was even told by somebody who facilitated the initiation after the fact that, like, at times, just from my experience, when you might be tapped or touched or parts of your body might be, I guess, whatever involved, it could literally be to get that. Like, I was tapped at the waist at one point. That was, I was told, that was to activate the chakra there, to awaken it, or to get it, like, understanding, like, it's time to pay attention to what's going on. So, like, even what you just said right now, like, that even resonates with me. Just real quick to make sense of it, of like what I was trying to explain before, and not to keep going on about it, but like, just real quick, like you even said in the whole act and stuff, even in the NOx formula, when Crowley acts like he's grabbing the nipple for the child to feed, if people were to look into the science between the nipple and the pineal gland and the child, there was a lot of weird shit going on. The child's actually going to find out from the mother's, stuff coming from her pineal gland into the milk, and tell the child where it is, what time it is, all this stuff. So it's just like, could that be being represented in his work and people just don't see it? That's what I was trying to get at with you. Like, could there be things in there that may actually, in a weird way, tie to science? I could be completely wrong about that whole thing, but
in Crowley's case,
there is a weird connection with the pineal gland and the child.
Yeah, especially the hand of Sabazios, right?
I can't comment on, but in Crowley, sorry,
with the hand of Sabazios,
sorry, I'm getting like,
oh yeah. Just let him.
It's got a delay.
Yeah, let him just answer what I just said. It's not a big deal. But...
Okay, with the hand of Sabazios specifically,
I was going to say one of my favorite
gland at the thumb. I'm sorry. It's going on.
I mean, for me, the psychic biology doesn't resonate.
Okay, all right, no, that's cool. Well, yeah, I wasn't expecting.
It can be implicated or not, but for a ritual to be efficacious, it has to be in a stream of otherworldly consciousness. I mean, it's seldom just our own energy. I mean, when I study, for instance, Crowley's text of a magical retreat in Paris, in John St. John. You probably know that one. He spends a lot of time to cultivate Kundalini as the kind of platform for what he's trying to achieve.
No, I get that. Yeah, I think there would be a lot of this is my opinion. I think there's a lot going inside your body when that happens. That's the only reason why I look at that stuff, because I do think in order to have that experience, there is certain changes within oneself. But again, I was just asking you just in case you happen to look at it that way. Most people don't. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting much of a different answer than you gave.
No, I look at it from the point of view of a deity interacting with us. I look at it from the point of view of a deity interacting with us. So, for instance, in the Vajrayana tradition, and I've experienced this myself, it doesn't matter if there's 10,000 people there or what your state of preparation is. When the initiation is given, it affects everyone simultaneously.
I believe that.
Okay.
We were watching the serpent
and that's straight from the deity.
We were watching The Serpent and the Rainbow on Friday night that was talking all about possession and voodoo. And I was thinking about the connection to Martinism as well, which is a direct sort of offshoot of the Eleusinian style mysteries that carried on in Europe. So you've got sort of a direct linkage between this old way of being possessed by a deity, and then as it transferred over to the New World, you get new expressions in terms of voodoo and hoodoo ceremonies, which use a lot of the same principles that they were using in ancient Greece. Divine madness.
Yeah, it's like bedrock. You know, it's that sense of proximity to a deity that empowers everything else. Because as embodied beings, we don't have access to those powers in and of ourselves. Kundalini is not a personal possession, for instance. It's not a private possession. It's not my Kundalini. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I like that. Another question I did have for you.
So this erasure of the persona. Yeah, the erasure of the persona is what I'm trying to get at. And in modern society, the persona is so prominent, you know. So that is a social problem with spirituality, modern spirituality. I think Crowley called it like a glove puppet.
It's a very Taoist thought, right? Like we really just sometimes have to get out of our own way. There is a Qigong practice where they back to the fire and the water, where they will focus on water practice through like steam and freezing our own in a mental imagination process, meditation practice, or with fire kind of burning away the obtuse or extra. Just wanted to mention that. And the Taoists kind of have the similar idea too that you're putting forth, where we have to get in alignment with the Tao before we can receive this energy that's beyond us and outside us to really connect and, engage.
Yeah, it's like commensurability again in the old mystery cults. Your energy body has to be a certain state of repair to allow it to function as an intermediary to vibrations that are simply too.
I wonder, Peter, with your understanding of these mystery cults and Mithras, and also you being an internal arts practitioner, I wonder if there's some kind of fusion you've been able to find in movement, or maybe a mental idea that you might share with people to stabilize or balance their energies.
Service. That's the master key. It's what service you provide.
So
That immediately resolves all wrinkles, all stresses.
when it comes to
Well-
mystery cults, I usually got to bring up the golden ass. And so at the very
Yeah.
end, he's saved by the cult of Isis. And so he becomes human again because of that. And he dedicates his life to serving everybody else after that time period. So he becomes a lawyer through the mystery schools. He makes connections. He becomes a lawyer and he starts serving the poor, which is really interesting. That's the moral of the story, is that you've got to get out of your way. You've got to get out of your head and start serving other people, because that's what the gods want you to do.
Yeah. It's like in a nutshell. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Peter, if you don't mind me asking, I want to get a little bit back to kind of some more normal questions. You do kind of, I mean, obviously, you mentioned the secret cult of Saturn. Your book strongly emphasizes Kronos. I know we kind of touched on Saturn and stuff, but how do you kind of see Saturn really functioning within Mithraism, as a metaphor principle or a god of binding, or as gatekeeper of all of them? If you don't mind maybe giving a little bit more in-depth idea of what of Kronos or Saturn is with Mithraism.
Yeah. Of course, when we talk about Saturn in this context, we're not talking about the planetary Saturn. We're talking about the demiurge in whatever, form. There's not much to say, because at the apex of this cult, of its spiritual experience, say, is non-dual awareness. It's the real gift when you experience reality as though you were a god for a brief period of time. And that's the ultimate compass.
Would you consider having that experience the same as Plotinus's Henosis?
Say again, please, Nick.
Would you say maybe having that experience would be I guess the same as Plotinus's Henosis, or maybe other people calling it the crossing the abyss? Is that what you think the outcome of this would be? Is having union with God?
Yeah, it's because that state is a resolution of all conflicts and contradictions.
Oof. Yeah, that's true.
Everything all of a sudden is what it is, and that is sufficient unto itself. So, the persona is so far behind in this process now that you're looking at like some kind of star being. You're looking at reality as though you had infinite time and space. It changes everything. Yes. But of course, we can't sustain that, level of awareness. We have to drop back into ourselves and back into our own karmas.
You got to go to work.
Societies.
Yeah.
You got to. Yeah. So that's unchanging. It's like, before enlightenment, after enlightenment, it's the same wood you have to chop, same water you have to tote. But after enlightenment, it is all in a very different framing. It's just the absolute priority to be of service.
Do you think it's being an experience?
Why? Because
forever.
Say?
Do you think there would be an experience that would change something forever? When you go from a cucumber to a pickle and you can never go back.
Yeah, basically. Basically.
Nice.
I mean, you can fall anytime you like. A lot of people who take on spiritual, let's say, education and mentorship as full-time task accumulate fresh karma from it. It's an incredibly demanding thing, and they go wrong. There's a lot of ways to go wrong. There's been so many abusive gurus.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to see this process is a multi-life process. We're not talking about, what you're going to do, in the next 10 years, next 12 years? How about the next 10 lifetimes? Where are you going to be?
That is a
So
good point.
a lot of it, I think, is trying to set the stage for successive incarnations. You know, which is why kind of dying consciously can be so important. You know, the recovery of memory of past lives, the cleansing of deep karma. You know, this is the graft. The real graft is spread out over many lifetimes, many incarnations in many different forms, at least in my view.
Do you think some of these initiations or the experience of it could maybe even tie it to like the experience that, like, you know, through shamanism? Like kind of like maybe pushing yourself almost to an NDE experience. It may sound weird. I don't know how else to ask.
I mean, once you activate fundamental energies in your psychoenergetic system, it's going to lead to all kinds of alterations of consciousness and awareness, all kinds of encounters, you know, which is what I think of shamanism as intermediation, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's sure all of us could tell some tales of contact, of touch points. Some of them are interdimensional, some of them from parasitic entities. Certainly working for 20 odd years in energy healing, we tend to encounter a lot of parasitic entities, and some of them can be very powerful. Okay, I don't think in terms of good and evil here. Okay,
Gotcha.
I'm not a dualist at all, but some entities are earthbound, some of them are location bound, some of them are people who've died unexpectedly and become parasitic on anyone that they can attach to. Some of them are persons who've passed over and have unfinished business and are constantly seeking to have someone to complete for them. And then you start getting into the higher order entities, which, you know, can be, I'll give you an example. I mean, running a energy healing practice, we had to routinely cleanse the rooms.
Oh,
you know, otherwise the atmosphere starts getting dense and heavy, you know, with people releasing stuff. So once I encountered, or we encountered, an Islamic scholar, and he offered his services to do this cleansing. And he had this like dense book with all these notes and diagrams and astrological charts. And he said, "Oh, fine, you know, we'll actually give you a kind of gift for doing it." We were open to that. And my wife and I were standing in the admin looking at all the invoices, and I distinctly saw like a white light sheet come across my vision. And as it passed us, our knees just went. The intensity of that fine vibration was so high. Literally, we just buckled, and but for the table, we'd have been on the floor. It swept through the space. So I think of it as being touched by the wings of an angel, frankly. You know,
Peter, I have a question about the placement of these Mithraiums. Now, would they be in alignment with earth energies that sort of enhance connection with spirit?
Yeah, I would guess. Almost always connected to a spring. Ooh. And therefore, you know, like most of the temples of Apollo on the Western Anatolian coast are situated where there's a deep rupture in the strata, rock strata. So you have water flowing and then changing level and emerging as a spring. And that's where all the oracular centers are located, you know, in Greece and in Turkey. So those, let's call them geopsychic energies, are incredibly powerful and assist in shifting the quality and depth of awareness. So they're natural oracular sites. Yeah, every Mithraea, pretty well, if it could be, is situated next to a spring. So you harness the Earth's energies for this kind of work if you can. Yeah.
So
get a
being in
leg up.
Turkey, I got to ask you about the earthquakes. Do you remember the devastating earthquakes that took place? I think it was in 2020.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Now,
it's always happening there, by the way.
I had a theory about that. So that was right after they shot these giant balls out of the sky in North America, right? So you've got the balls
right.
in the sky that landed in the ocean, right? After they shot them out of the sky, like Uranus being castrated by Kronos. And then you have the
real weird stuff there.
Right, you have the massive earthquakes go on in Turkey immediately afterwards, and it's like this is where the Mithraeums and these practices were done, and now they're cutting off the castration in the sky. It's so strange.
I know. I mean, the whole thing with the UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it, phenomena, is a constant in human cultural history and development. They've always been here. I'm sure they inhabit parts of the Earth. I'm sure of that. And if you look really closely at the alien abduction phenomena, for instance, as you know, John Mack was head of psychiatry at Harvard. I did a longitudinal study of people suffering PTSD without any trauma. And he checked their family histories, no sign of mental illness. The one constant factor they all had was the recovery of alien abduction phenomena under hypnosis. So I'm also convinced that there is a long-term process or project of intervention in human biological development. That's weird.
It goes along the same lines as the shifting of consciousness. I think there's some other, kind of form of intelligence that has been interacting with us for thousands of years, and we've lost our immunity to some of the more destructive elements of it because we had that knowledge kind of destroyed.
A lot of people who have that alien abduction experience wake up with a sense of purpose that they didn't have beforehand. So it also acts as like a trigger, as an initiator, let's say. It's almost like a form of initiation.
Well, it changes their life too, forever.
Yeah.
Same thing with the near-death experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. Absolutely. Yeah. I had a number of those. I say a lot of these cases we documented in the book, The Power of the Healing Field. It's like a Kindle book for like $2 if you're interested. But in there, over that 20, 30 years, we documented the most extreme cases that we encountered in the energy healing business. And it's extraordinary.
Thank you, man. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Well, I had one question. So I know that there's aspects of Zoroastrianism that were brought, or that are incorporated into Judaism. Is there anything from, or I guess any kind of aspects from Mithraism that are incorporated in any mainstream religions today, or that folks really don't recognize?
Not that I'm aware of, because
you're aware of.
Yeah, it kind of disappeared from view, around 600. And it didn't resurface again until the 15th century when they started digging up Roman remains. There was a big period of antiquarianism. There was a market all of a sudden. So people were digging up any bits of Roman stuff they could find. So for like 1,000 years, it just disappeared. It was like zero visibility. And then, of course, by the 17th, 18th century, it was really popular.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, its recovery kind of coincided with the emergence of Freemasonry in Europe.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I guess if nobody else has any other questions, was there anything, Peter, that you would like to maybe say to maybe like, advertise the book or to let people know or anything like? Is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah,
Prior.
there's a whole series of books, So people should check out Scarlet Imprint and Theon Publishing and Inner Traditions. I'm published by all of them. So the Inner Traditions is the healing, energy healing stuff. Scarlet Imprint is the Renaissance Tarot deck and tarot book, and the Hagia Sophia, decoding the architecture of that. Theon Publishing is doing the power of the ritual and epiphany. So I'm like spread over the 3 publishers.
Nice. I'm surprised, Inner Tradition sends me people all the time. I don't think they ever told me about you. It's, I'm gonna have to say something to them about that.
I think the energy healing thing is not that popular amongst the esoteric community, which I think is a shame. It's almost like the rituals you're describing are seen as sufficient to do the job. And my own conviction is you need to do the energy work as well.
Oh,
it's not enough to rely on.
I totally agree on that. I totally agree on that.
The Golden Dawn cleansing. And you need to avail yourself of modern energy meridian techniques like emotional freedom techniques and so on. They should be in everybody's repertoire by now. I mean, Gary Craig proved them back in the 80s when he went to Vietnam Veterans Hospital and filmed it. And these guys had post-traumatic stress disorder since the 60s. It's now 20 years later. And he was just tapping them and clearing the traumas one after the other. And here we are, they're still dishing out powerful drugs for PTSD, And we know that it's solvable by simply tapping on the meridians while having a loose connection to the trauma, the originating trauma. That's sufficient. It'll knock down PTSD to a minor anxiety within 2 sessions. And that's been proven now with medical trials. But still, this has been known for half a century. And what more can I say? People need to take more responsibility for their healing.
Oh, wow, well said. I even I don't know. I'm sure you know of the man David Lynch, but I mean, even just what he used to say about transcendental meditation and how he was showing that, bringing that into schools and just integrating that, what wonders it could do for a human being. So I totally agree. You have to actually put in the time and work to change your inner, what's going on in your head, and I think that could just make huge do well for you. I do have another question that somebody asked before we wrap it up. I've seen statements that Jung was into Mithraism. Does Peter have any comments on this?
Jung was into everything. I mean, Eastern religions, Mithraism. I mean, he was an encyclopedic mind and curiosity. So yeah, absolutely. Anything to do with the iconographic world of humanity's spiritual consciousness was like his daily meat and bread. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Peter. Again, even your tarot and believe it or not, the energy healing thing, I'm extremely interested in. So hopefully maybe in the future we can have a discussion with you again, but this was awesome. I'm really, really happy that we had you on, Headless.
Okay.
Thank you so much for suggesting him as a guest. I thought this was a banger. This was really good, and I really appreciated your outlook and all the stuff you had to bring to the show, Peter. Before we wrap it up, though, I will have everybody plug themselves again. Real quick, Headless Giant, thank you again for bringing Peter onto the show, and let everybody know about all those shows you're doing again.
Absolutely. So I've got trialogues with Ethan today at some point, I think, and we've got Alchemy Mondays coming on tomorrow with Eros Up, and we're going to be doing some more experimentation. And we've got the mailbag on Thursdays with me and Nick, where we show symbols and read your mail. So send us your occult/esoteric experiences at headlessgiant podcast@gmail.com, and we will read those. Thank you. And you'll get stickers as well if you include your address. Nick will send you stickers.
Yes. And the sticker that I'm sending, the occult symbolism is depicted off the inside of your eyeball. And Jules, next, please, sir. Let everybody know what's going on with you.
All right. This was a great episode. I learned a lot. Thank you, Peter, for coming on. Guys, y'all can follow me at Graypilled Pod on Twitter, Graypilled_podcast on Instagram. Go follow me on Rumble, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/GrayPillPodcast. We have Patreon exclusive content we do over there. You'll see the Occult Rejects over there as well. A bunch of familiar faces. Also, I was going to say I'm probably going live later today. Don't know what the show is going to be yet, but probably tonight at some point. So stay posted on that. And this week I have a few shows. I believe Tuesday, Doc Brown is going to come on. And Tuesday, no, that's Wednesday, I think. Wednesday, I have a couple shows. I may have to reschedule one for some other time this week. Then Thursday, because I think Robbie's going to come on as well. And then Dana from Rotten Jules is also going to come on. And I'm also dropping the Inquiries of Reality episode sometime today. So a bunch of stuff coming from Gray Pill this next month, guys. Headless, we got to do a Hand of Zabazios, like a little deep dive on everything on the hand. I really am very interested in that. And y'all look out for the next episode on the Rustic Gods that we do, dropping sometime this week. But great episode, guys, and hope everyone has a great day. Thank you again.
No, thank you, Jules. Appreciate you making it on. And last but not least, before we let Peter plug his stuff again, please, Ethan, let everybody know what is going on.
Well, that was so informative and inspirational. I love the idea of smoothing over the wrinkles of energetics with service. So thank you so much, Peter, for sharing. Ethan Indigo Smith, easy to find on all the social media. And I always appreciate people communicating and so forth. So thanks again, everyone. And Peter, that was awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was. And Peter, real quick, if you don't mind.
Thank you all.
Go ahead, let everybody know.
All good, Peter.
Say again, Nick.
Yeah, let everybody know, if you don't mind repeating yourself from the beginning. Let everybody know where they can find all your amazing work, and let them know about all your books, please, that you'd like to promote.
Oh, so check out Scarlet Imprint, check out Theon Publishing, and Energy Healing stuff, Inner Traditions. So anyway, just Google me all over the internet. You can't miss it. Peter Mark Adams.
If you look him up for authors, you're gonna get tons of shit. So yeah. Thank you again, Peter. That was it was really an awesome show. It was very informative for me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, this is a topic I don't know much about. So thank you for giving me some insight on this stuff. And again, hopefully get you on for the tarot and the energy stuff. That was really interesting that you brought that stuff up. Again, thank you everybody in the chat. There was a lot of people in here, a lot of people dropping some good stuff. There was some names that I don't know if you were new or maybe I just noticed you now. Thank you for saying stuff and joining in on the live. That's why we do it. I really do love a lot of the comments that are added in there. I do highly suggest for people who maybe catch the live as a rerun, check out the live chat as you're watching it if you can, because you will see information in there as well that I think helps even with the guest or just other ideas. So again, thank you everybody. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.